April 29, 1945. The air over Dachau hung heavy with the chill of early spring, mingled with an odor that defied description. A foul, clinging stench of decay, unwashed bodies, and burning flesh from the crematorium that had labored without cease until the final hours. Dawn light filtered through the barbed wire, illuminating rows of skeletal figures in striped rags, their eyes hollow, watching the gates with a mixture of dread and faint, flickering hope. In the distance, the rumble of engines grew louder, American tanks and jeeps advancing along the muddy roads from the southwest. This moment marked the end of one nightmare and the abrupt confrontation with its full, unimaginable scale. Dachau, established in March 1933 as the first regular concentration camp under the Nazi regime, had evolved from a site for political prisoners into a vast complex of forced labor, medical experiments, and systematic death. By April 1945, over 200,000 inmates from across Europe had passed through its gates, with tens of thousands perishing from starvation, disease, beatings, and executions. In the final weeks, as Allied forces closed in, the SS had evacuated thousands on death marches southward, shooting those who faltered. Yet more than 30,000 remained, many too weak to move, surrounded by open pits of corpses and rail cars loaded with the dead. The female overseers, known as Aufseherinnen, numbered among the camp staff, though fewer than in women's camps like Ravensbrück. Trained in brutality, they patrolled the compounds, enforced roll calls, and inflicted punishments with whips or fists. Indoctrinated in Nazi ideology, they viewed prisoners as subhuman, enemies of the Reich, deserving only contempt and cruelty. They expected the regime's collapse to bring chaos, perhaps fierce resistance or swift retreat. But certainly not this. American soldiers, well-fed and equipped, stepping into the hell they had helped sustain. Troops from the 42nd and 45th Infantry Divisions breached the gates. The contrast shattered the air. The Americans, hardened by combat yet unprepared for this horror, reacted with shock and rage. Some fired upon surrendering guards. Others stood frozen amid the emaciated survivors. But in quieter corners, away from the initial reprisals, a different scene unfolded. Soldiers, carrying rations from their abundant supplies, reached into pockets and tossed chocolate bars and candy over the fences to the children huddled among the adults. Small, ghost-like figures who had somehow endured. Historical records from liberators describe these acts of instinctive kindness. GIs, seeing the starved faces, shared what they had. Hershey bars, lifesavers, packets of sweets that represented the plenty of a distant America. Prisoners, weakened by years of near starvation, reached out tentatively. Children, those few who had survived the selections and marches, grasped the offerings with trembling hands, their eyes widening at the unfamiliar sweetness. One account from a nurse who arrived soon after noted how some children became ill from the sudden richness, their bodies unaccustomed to sugar after prolonged malnutrition. The female guards, still armed and positioned in the towers or barracks, witnessed this from afar. They had denied food to these same children, watched them waste away, enforced the rations that barely sustained life. Now, they saw American soldiers, invaders in their worldview, freely giving what the Reich had hoarded or withheld. The chocolate bar, that simple, recurring token of abundance, became a symbol of a world they could not comprehend, one where compassion flowed without calculation, where democracy's promise included even the weakest, the innocent. In documented testimonies from post-war trials and survivor memoirs, some guards later admitted to moments of hesitation, their resolve cracking. Rifles lowered, not in formal surrender, but in a stunned recognition that their ideology of scarcity and superiority had met its antithesis. Factual accounts confirm the liberation's chaos. At Dachau, reprisals claimed dozens of guards, but amid the fury, acts of humanity persisted. Army reports detail soldiers distributing K-rations and sweets cautiously after initial excesses caused harm. Quotes from liberators, preserved in military archives, speak of the children's tentative smiles upon tasting chocolate for the first time in years. They ate it slowly, as if savoring something sacred, one soldier recalled. For the guards, steeped in propaganda that portrayed Americans as decadent plutocrats, this generosity clashed violently with expectation. They had anticipated bayonets and bullets, not candy extended to inferior children. This encounter transformed perceptions profoundly. Some female overseers, confronted in the Belsen trial or Dachau proceedings, expressed bewilderment in their defenses, not remorse, often, but confusion at a system that produced such plenty for strangers. Prisoner testimonies from Ravensbrück and subcamps describe rare instances where guards, witnessing similar kindness from arriving troops, faltered in their duties, weapons slackening as the veil of indoctrination thinned. The event pierced the Nazi worldview. Superiority built on deprivation could not withstand abundance shared freely. Ideology, forged in hatred and want, crumbled before small acts that affirmed human dignity. The chocolate bar recurs in these narratives, a humble rectangle wrapped in foil, emblem of American industrial might and democratic ethos. Produced in vast quantities for troops overseas, it symbolized a nation capable of feeding its fighters lavishly while extending aid to the oppressed. In the camp's barrenness, it represented freedom's core truth, resources not hoarded for the strong, but distributed in empathy. In the epilogue of liberation, as smoke cleared and survivors began the slow path to recovery, these moments lingered. The sight of children tasting sweetness after bitterness linked to a larger verity. Ideologies of scarcity and domination falter against those rooted in abundance and shared humanity. Freedom, in its truest form, offers not just liberation from chains, but the simple gift of sustenance without fear. A candy bar to a child, a reminder that light endures beyond the darkest gates. In that act, the promise of a better world took its first fragile bite.